Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fine episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team of record reviewers. The ones you know and love, the ones that are here every week, the quorum. You got Brett.
Hey.
You got Drew.
Hey.
And you've got Patrick.
Hey.
We're here, of course, gathered to talk about music, and the provider of this week's album is none other than Brett. Brett, what do you got for us this week?
We got some rock, and a particular kind of rock that I tend to enjoy. We've got Machine Head, the album made by the band Deep Purple, released in 1972.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, Deep Purple. So Machine Head. Let's go. Patrick, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
So I know who Deep Purple are. I've heard Smoke on the Water 5 million times, and this is one of those albums that's got 3 or 4 songs you've heard a million times, but you may have not ever placed who they were by. And those songs are by Deep Purple, apparently. I like some parts of this era of rock music. I love Led Zeppelin. I like The Who are sort of, I would say, contemporaries, but more, you know, Deep Purple were kind of proto-metal and sort of got a lot of that sound before it came along later. So I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I had never listened to this particular album.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I'm also fortunate enough. Deep Purple is a band that I've heard before. I've picked up a string instrument and played Smoke on the Water like every other 14-year-old who has picked up a string instrument. That's sort of what you do. That's the second or third song every 14-year-old learns. And it's not the song. I should preface that. It's the one riff from Deep Purple that everybody knows.
Played incorrectly, inevitably.
Oh, right. It's always like an octave too high, or it's
a power chord, not fourths.
Yes.
Right. Indeed. There's always something wrong about it. But you try, and it's the same idea, and everybody knows what you're playing. But besides that, I sort of knew what I was getting into. Like Swagger said, there's the songs here you've heard before on the radio, but there's more to it than that, which we will get into later.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what would be kind of the themes and elements? What makes this album tick for you?
First and foremost, this is the era that I love because it has rock and roll organ. There's nothing I love more than some rock and roll organ, especially when it's done so well and it's like completely, fuzzed out and overdriven. It was for a lot of the things that people try and do on guitar that don't know any better, that don't know that there's an organ. The organ sort of plays a up front and center role on this album, and John Lord is amazing. He did go on to be in Whitesnake, I think, but he just the fact that he is like just an amazing musician. There's on top of that, like it's got some bass that's actually worth listening to, which is kind of odd for this era. It's got really tight drums, it's got big voice, and it's got Ritchie Blackmore, which, he was probably playing second fiddle, but he probably didn't know that at the time. It's a very, very good album that's built off of being, like, super groovy. Like, they were in it for the groove, and you can't go wrong when you have an album that's in it for the groove.
Mm-hmm. You feel the groove. Feel the groove. Feel the vibration. Oh, wait, that's a different song.
Good vibrations.
Good vibration now! I'm not going to drop my pants.
Going off the rails.
Off a crazy train. Again, different band. Patrick, what would be the themes and elements that caught your attention on this record?
Oh, so much organ. That was sort of the thing I had never thought of until Brett sort of said, all those things that you think are weird guitar parts, yeah, they're probably an organ. And if you know that going in, you realize Well, yeah, Richie Blackmore's awesome, and he's one of those, like, all-time great guitar players, especially of that sort of late 60s, early 70s guitar god ilk. But no one talks about John Lord ripping on an organ better than most guitar players play guitars. And that was sort of the thing that really, really got me in this. And just how gritty and dirty they sounded in 72 or so, 71. Considering the lack of, this is before people had, big gain, heavy gain staging amps and tons of pedals to get all sorts of distortion. These guys just freaking cranked, and it sounded amazing.
Drew, what would be the themes elements that stood out for you?
As has been said, actually exactly how I was going to say it. The surprising part to me, when really diving into their stuff, was that the keys in any like sort of classic rock band always take second fiddle to sweeping amazing guitar solos in the vocals. But here the keys were like up front, they were center, and like they were the ones doing the bulk of like that sort of intricate solo work, which was really cool. Like Brett said, there is some really good bass work when you actually listen for it. It's really strong. The melody, like the drive to it and the hooks to it are really, really great. And that's sort of why songs like Highway Star and Smoke on the Water and stuff like that got known, is like you hear them and it's a catchy song. That's just what it is. And they sort of laid the groundwork. This band is sort of like, when you listen to Deep Purple as a whole, you get what classic rock sort of is. It's, to me, this type of sound is the baseline for that era in like rock and roll and heavy metal and stuff like that. And when you hear them, it's not trying to do anything weird with the genre or go too far off into one direction. To me, this is the baseline. This is like, if you don't hit if you're not aiming to hit at least here, you're not aiming right. Like, this is what it is.
Yeah, it kind of sets the standard in a lot of different ways. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you that you would say define this record?
Well, any song that like starts out with like an organ groove, and then somebody like full like faded in like vocal scream like heavy metal. Before there was other people doing that, kind of like draws my attention. I was like, oh, Highway Star. That's I know the song pretty well, but every time I hear the beginning of that, I'm like, oh, that's kind of hip that they thought to do that. It's a very a smile-filled listen when I sit down and listen to it, because like it does its thing like you think it's going to, and then all of a sudden there's like this like crazy weird ass organ solo in the middle of it that doesn't have to be there, but they decided that's going to be there, and that just makes me so happy. I mean, it should be noted that like the entirety of Deep Purple, the only two people that have been in that band the whole time was the keyboard player and the bassist. So like when your front man is the keyboard player up until just about this era, when the band leader, I guess you should say, is the organ guy, he gets to put in stuff like this. I really like enjoyed Pictures of Home. It's fun. The soloing on it is really cool. I got a little piece from Encyclopedia Metallum. They said Pictures of Home kicks off with a trite polka-like disappointing bass line, like a deliberate ploy to lull the listener into a false sense of security before the solos blow them away. It's kind of my feelings as well. Those solos were better than they should have been. Just to we'll keep it to 3, Space Truckin', because any song about space and truckin', that's full of fuzz, nice blending of the guitar and the organs playing both similar parts, but actually putting some depth to it. And they have a drum solo. I mean, it's, there's a drum solo. There you go. Everybody got their slice of pie in this album. And, crap, I really liked it.
Patrick, what would be some of the tracks that caught your attention?
I will agree on the record breaker singing the first song, Highway Star. I don't know what video game commercial it was used in, but I feel like there was a video game with a car driving fast to that song, and it totally works for that. Is that a rock band one?
Too. Yeah.
Okay, so that seems like a song where you are in a muscly muscle car driving very quickly down a dark road, and I like driving songs, and so that one automatically gets me. I'm not in love with the vocals on the record. I don't think they're bad. I just think at the same time you had, Robert Plant and Roger Daltrey, and they're both better. But that's like, I don't think that's the star here. The star here is the organs and the guitars. I'll comment on Smoke on the Water since it's there. It's kind of, every time you hear an 11-year-old butcher it really bothers you. But when you actually listen to the original, it's kind of awesome because it is.
Petey, we're getting the voice of Google.
Oh, what happened? Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yay! No one gets to see me. Yay!
It was Wikipedia for a while, so it was noteworthy.
So, Smoke on the Water is it's a better song than hearing people butcher it makes it out to be. If you listen to the original, the layering of the guitar and the organ is what really makes it. And it's kind of a groovy song once they get off of the iconic riff. And Space Truckin' had a drum solo, and I am all about a drum solo, and it was a good drum solo. And I will say, from an album made in the early 70s, the drums sounded really good, and drums in the 70s never sound good.
It was recorded in an abandoned hotel.
that even more blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like there's no, usually drums in the 70s didn't sound good. The only guy I think who ever got good drum sounds in the 70s was John Bonham, and now here's another one. It sounds awesome. It's what it is. It is, to use the tortured and often misused term classic rock, but it kind of is. I agree that Neil Young guy? Yeah, he was a great drummer, but the drum tone he got was not all that spectacular until the 80s.
Yeah, that's who we're talking about. I think got lost.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. I can't speak words. But it's really good at being different than the stuff around it because of the organ work. It gives it something unique and different. And why are there not, I understand that a real Hammond B3 sells for as much as a new car right now. But there's a million. If you want to get a real Hammond B3 in good condition,
they were playing on a
$20,000,
which was the console version. You could get a C3 for cheap. They just weigh a couple hundred extra pounds.
But there's enough technology now that someone does a decent clone of a Hammond, and it should be in everything, played just with this sort of gritty, ripped through a guitar amp sound. We need more of this. Where do I get more of this? Why can't more bands have this? I want every hard rock band in the universe to add a Hammond player.
The Darkness really tried.
Yes.
But yeah.
It didn't work out.
No.
It didn't work out over here. Apparently England loves that. Didn't work here.
Well, England also loves big techno festivals, and they have been for years.
Aren't they Australian? But never mind.
And the Darkness is Australian. But they succeeded in England too.
They did.
Guy was on Top Gear. I mean, that's when you know you've arrived.
He's got a smile worth $1 million too. But
yes. But Drew, what would be some of the tracks that caught your attention?
Well, we're gonna have to, of course, talk about Highway Star again. Great keyboard solo. It's the type of song that I like to go back to and think that don't drive a car and listen to this on public roads if you're easily susceptible to what you're listening to while you're driving, like I am, and you end up going way too fast in an area where you shouldn't be going way too fast. That sort of thing. It has that driving beat. It just makes you want to do whatever you're doing and do it faster, because that's the sort of like, you just get that in your head and it's that sort of earworm sort of thing. Smoke on the Water, everybody knows the riff. Everybody's heard the riff a million times. Everybody tries to play the riff, no matter what stringed instrument they get in their hand. I bet you there are violin players that the first thing they try to do is pick out Smoke on the Water. But it's way more than just the riff. There's way more going on there. You listening to it, like I said before, if you're searching for it, that bass there is just really some top-notch stuff. And then something I'm really surprised nobody else went into was Lazy. Lazy to me was just a great song overall. It had that blues twang to it. There was a solid riff going on, great keys, and a really cool long intro. There's nothing to me more quintessentially classic rock than that. That is, when you want good classic rock, those are sort of fun tenets to go to, and it was there.
Some of the good tropes, some of the fantastic tropes of classic rock is those intros and whatnot. Yeah, and we can go back around the horn, kind of get some conclusive thoughts. Patrick, what would be your conclusion about the album overall?
Definitely worth a listen. It was kind of better than expected, I guess. I thought I was going to be really bored by it because I've heard, sometimes you feel like you've heard all the 70s rock there is to hear, and you've heard most of it because we all have. But it's a tight, simple album. It works. All of the musicians on it are good. The bass player probably hides a little too much for me, but he hides doing a good job. The drums are pretty standard other than the drum solo and Space Truckin', but it's done well. And Richie Blackmore and John Lord ripping on keyboards. It's kind of awesome for that alone. Like that to me carries it.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be your conclusions about the album overall?
Like I said, this is one of those things where if you are into rock and roll, there are certain things that you need to go back to and understand where that sort of sound, there are cliches in certain styles of rock music, and the cliche can usually be traced back to a certain era of bands and a certain couple of bands. Deep Purple is one of those bands where you can trace it back, and it's like, you know how there's that sort of like just heavy hard rock, heavy metal like sound in a lot of classic rock coming through the 70s and 80s. A lot of that can be traced back to Deep Purple. If you don't go back and listen to it for that, you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice, I think, if you're into that sort of music. If you play piano of any sort, if you tickle yourself some ivories every once in a while, and you don't listen to yourself some Deep Purple, also doing yourself a disservice. If you're not into that style of rock and roll at all, you're not going to find anything here. To go elsewhere. But if you're even into that a little bit, I say give it a shot.
Yeah, it is just a fantastic record and some fun stuff. Like, I pretty much got what I wanted out of it. I got rock and roll, as well. It was fun stuff, and this is the kind of tunes that'll make you do air guitar on the bus on the way to work.
Mm-hmm.
And
big fat tires and everything.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what would be your conclusions about the album overall as I hit puberty?
It's groovy. If you're into that, it's got that. If you aren't, then why are you listening to any of these albums that we bring? Because little like behind the scenes, we're all into the groove. It's an album that's almost made for musicians, but I think that if you don't pick apart music piece by piece, you can still find there's still gold in them there hills. It is methodical in its way of rocking, and there's a reason why they are considered the early Genesis, very big founding sound style that the metal guys later on in the 70s latched on to. They got that going for them.
Which is nice.
Let's wrap it up, kids. It's done. We aren't doing any better than that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the main event of the evening. Let's get to our haiku reviews. Let's see, who's going to start us off? I'm going to let Drew start us off. Drew, what is your haiku?
You get what you buy. No more. No less. You know? It's a good approach.
Patrick, what is your haiku?
What the world needs is way more Hammond organ. Please make that happen.
I've got my haiku. Fantastic rock band that crank out well and love to play with their organ. Brett, what is your haiku?
A powerful bench focused on laying the groove. Rock and roll organ.
Yeah, that's our thoughts on Deep Purple's Machine Head. You can tune out now because we're just going to go through the end of show spiel.
Unless you want to know what
what are we doing next week? We're just going to...
Well, some people don't care. But you can check this out on... I'm just being honest here. So you can check this out if you're playing Record Breakers, the home game, on our Spotify playlist. Like I've said numerous times, let us know where you want us to curate your playlist, and we'll try to do just that. But right now, you can check it out on the Spotify playlist. We update it as soon as we can. On that playlist is going to be the next record, which will be provided by none other than Drew. Drew, what do you got for us next week?
When I think of punk rock, and specifically skate punk, there are some bands that I just are part of who I was growing up, and one of those bands is a little band from Sweden by the name of Millencolin, and their album specifically, Home From Home.
So go ahead and check that out. Get yourself prepared for next week to play along with us. But that's it for us. You can find us all over the internet. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at Hibbity Bibbard, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. Like 4 Horsemen. Number 4 Record Breakers.
Like Pestilence and Famine and those guys.
And Arn Anderson. RecordBreakersPodcast.com, RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on, iTunes, Stitcher, subscribe, share, like. That's it. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.